We're going to start, though, with the amazing Quahli Newchurch, local Kaurna woman who I've had the great pleasure of working with over the last few years, and it's a deep privilege to have her with us today. We will start with that, and then I'll introduce the speakers as we go through. So I'll hand over to Quahli.
To begin with today, I want to share my deepest respects for the lands on which we meet, the lands of the Ngarrindjeri peoples, Ngarrindjeri Rui, and pay my respects to the ancestors of place. Sorry. Without the ongoing strength, resilience, and resistance of the ancestors and our elders, we wouldn't be here today. Not just me as a First Nations person, but everyone sitting in this room. I'm deeply grateful for the wisdom and the love that our elders continue to share for us. And I'm thankful for their ongoing support and care. These respects are shared with some other elders within our landscape, and they're our elder trees, those big old ones that you still see in the middle of the farming paddocks. They've been around since longer than any of us. They know our law, they know the old ways, and they're a part of our song, dance, and ceremony. And they're lonely without that. So I encourage you all to bring yourselves back to our elder trees when you see them. Go and sit with them. Let them know you're here. Dance under them. Bring yourself back into country, because we are also nothing without that. So I'm part of the Kaurna fire team associated with Fire Sticks Alliance Network. My name is Quahli Newchurch. I'm a proud Kaurna Narungga Gugata woman. I also have family ancestry on my papa's side to Ngarrindjeri country. Previously, I've worked in environmental management and volunteer support services before moving into cultural education and advisory services. I currently sit on Warpalakamunka, the Kaurna Environmental Advisory Body for the Green Adelaide Landscape Board, and I am the community coordinator for the Kaurna Fire team. So as you can see, we're currently a team of 4 fire practitioners, and we're supported by partnerships with Green Adelaide Landscape Board and AGL. I work alongside Rennie Simpson, who is our regional coordinator. He organises all of our projects. Clem Newchurch, my brother, he's the lead fire practitioner, and Paul Dixon Jr., who's an associate that we're training up. We're always seeking new partnerships for funding in order to increase our team capacity, get more Kaurna people on country. It is the most culturally appropriate work that I have ever come across, and it's really empowering and really important for our people. Our journey began about 10 years ago with the hard work of one of our prominent elders, Auntie Mel Simpson, who connected with Victor Stephenson of Fire Sticks to begin conversations around bringing cultural fire back to Kaurna country. Fire Sticks is a nationwide organisation founded by Victor Stephenson, who is a Tagalaka man from North Queensland, and he's well known for his work in assisting communities nationally and also internationally in reviving and revitalising cultural fire practices. In November 2019, we had our first community workshop with Victor and Fire Sticks to share knowledges amongst community of cultural fire, and we followed that workshop with another workshop with government and council organisations to start promoting that work. This led to the City of Adelaide partnering with Kaurna and receiving a Green Adelaide Grassroots grant to hold a cultural burn, the first cultural burn on Kaurna country in a very long time, and this was held in Tathunga in the Adelaide Parklands. And this was a huge moment in recent history for Kaurna, the first cultural burn to be held in over 100 years in the middle of a capital city, across the road from St Andrew's Hospital, and to be surrounded by Kaurna community, but not only Kaurna, Ngarrindjeri, Narungga, Peramangk, as well as members of the local Adelaide community, to all be there sharing in that historical moment and sharing in that good fire. I had a video of the parklands burn to show the footprint. This is actually post the burn, about 2 years later. The native grasses are thick and abundant. On the day, it was incredible for community to be able to see this safe fire, the right fire, to see how cool it was. My daughter was there running around barefoot after the flames, so was the daughter of a few other people in this audience. And I had a local landholder who'd been impacted by the Kangaroo Island bushfires come and share how healing that experience had been. To come full circle, to see the devastation of fire and to also see how healing it could be for not only country but for us. Many years ago, we all needed fire to survive, to cook, to keep warm, for light. It's only recently, and with the mismanagement of country and the devastation of wildfires and prescribed burns, that people have come to fear fire, and rightfully so. But our land evolved with fire, and it evolved with us, First Nations people. And these are the two things that have been missing for the past 200 years. So now we're on a journey to bring ourselves back and to bring our fire back. We're walking alongside our neighbouring nations to get good fire back on country where it should be. And this photo here shows the inaugural South Australian Women's Fire Sticks Conference that was held earlier in the year, that was supported by the 9 landscape boards across South Australia. And we brought women from each nation within those landscape boards together to share stories of cultural fire and how it's done differently across the state. We've also been to Narungga country. We have family connections there, so it's easy to kind of share the journey and help the community over there. And we've been to Kangaroo Island, the 3 nations that are associated with that place, which is Kaurna, Narungga and Ngarrindjeri, to discuss how we can heal that landscape. So our main project at the moment is down at Field River, which is a river system in the southern suburbs, and we're cleaning this space up. It's full of olives, it's full of ash and weeds, and lots of leaf litter and rubbish from being left for hundreds of years. We use fire as a weapon, as well as to heal. So in order to put cool fire on country, we need to prepare country. So we rake out the leaf litter from under these old gum trees. Sometimes that leaf litter is about 3 foot deep. So you can imagine if we put a fire on that, that'll hold that fire. That becomes a hot fire, and that's really dangerous for these old trees and their root systems. If that fire gets into them, then we risk losing them. And they're our elders. We don't want that. So we're raking out the leaf litter. We're removing the rubbish. You can see in this system there's a tarp in that photo. We've pulled out a car body from the creek line. It's a spring-fed creek running alongside these eucalypts. Pulled out a car body by hand, and we're seeing how the space has gone from feeling claustrophobic and unable to breathe to everything kind of opening up. So there's multiple fires that we've been utilising, and if we just pause on this one for a minute, this was one of the last grassland areas that we burned. So I guess where I'm getting at is we're healing country first and foremost to bring back our native foods. This hillside grass burn, when you walk up here, all the olives have been removed, and there's multiple grass species and there's multiple lilies and tuberous plants. This hillside hasn't seen fire for a very long time, and we are hoping that by bringing that fire back, we're going to regenerate all the grasses, all the lilies and tubers, and have a really abundant grassland area. Our grasslands were very important food sources for us, As I've just said, the grains within them, there were multiple grain species, there were multiple vegetables, and they were perennial. So now we're planting all these monoculture crops, and we're having to use massive resources in ploughing and harvesting and replanting every year. Whereas the grasslands that we had that were already here, they provided for us multiple times a year, multiple grains multiple times a year, and the vegetables. If we can go to the next slide, so you can see our burn scar. You can see there's still green throughout. You can see those fire breaks are actually just walking tracks. And again, you can see some of those patches in the slide before, they were just patches of soursop. So we're reading the indicators within the landscape to burn at the right time, making sure that it's not too hot, not too dry, that there's enough moisture in the soil to keep that fire cool, to keep it low, to ensure that we're not leaving a vast exposed area of dirt, and to really encourage the right ash back into the soil, the right nutrients, and encourage the right plants to come back. So as the next slide says, this is all part of a cultural revival for Ghana. We've been going through this for quite a long time. We've brought back our language over the last 10, 20 years. And bringing back cultural fire to the landscape, it's not only healing country, but it's healing us. And that's really important. We're able to bring in practices, cultural practices that our elders weren't allowed. So a few of the other things that I'd wanted to talk about was sheep, I guess, and that post-colonial impact on our landscape. So the Adelaide Plains were grey box grassy woodland, a lot of clear, open grassland that were really easy to come and clear, I guess, to put different crops on, and to put those animals like sheep, to start farming. And that just makes me really sad, the more I learn about our landscape and what it provides for all of us, how much we've taken from it and how much we've altered it. I guess one of the biggest things for me is when we're talking about regenerative agriculture and food security and water security, we don't need to come up with new answers, new ways to farm. What we actually need to do is stop and listen to country, because the answers are here within our landscape and they're within our First Nations people. And healing country and food security goes hand in hand. Everything is connected. If we look after our environment, it provides for us everything that we need. We don't need to see it as something that's parallel to what we're doing or separate to. We are all a part of this system, and I really encourage you to think about that when you're trying to look into ways to secure our food systems and our water in the future. Just remember, as I said, the answer is within the landscape. We don't need any more new ideas. It's already there. Thank you. Sorry that was a little bit all over the place.
Thank you, Quahli. Talking about being very flexible. I'm going to move away from this. Very powerful, and I apologise for the change in presentations, but she did an incredible job. I'm going to let the speakers introduce themselves as we come through. We've now got rapid fire presentations. We've got 6 coming up. So we're going to start off with Ben, who's a local farmer. I'll hand over to Ben.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have any of these fancy pictures. And I feel like I'm a bit big standing a bit close. I agree that we don't have new things to learn. The knowledge is here. The knowledge is within us, within our landscape. So we've just got to tap back into that. And I also like the fact that you've now come from a speaker who was a bit all over the place, because that's about how I will present to you. So I want you to start I want to start by asking you to shut your eyes, grab a beanie and a big woolly coat. You need to do that now. We're not going to be away very long, just a short trip. And now you're going to levitate and go to the moon. So you're now sitting on the moon and you're looking back at Earth. So you can open your eyes and see the Earth if you need to, or keep them closed, I don't care. But you're looking at the Earth. And then you're thinking about everything that's on the Earth. The people, plants, the rocks. There's just this big blue rock out in space. And you've got a fairly good perspective of what that's all about when you're sitting on the moon. Okay, now you can come back to Earth, take your beanie off, take your big coat off. It's quite warm here. So you've got this picture of what this rock that we're all living on. Now I want you to look at somebody in the room, just eyeball them. Anybody, it doesn't matter who it is, but just eyeball somebody. Now I want you to feel responsibility. So we're responsible for that rock that's floating around in space. We're responsible for each other. And if we keep those two things in mind, and we act in a way that keeps that in mind, we can do no harm. We don't want to hurt somebody that we've eyeballed. We don't want to hurt that rock that's floating around there that we call home. So that's where I come from when I attempt to produce food that's good for us. So we're very fortunate that we've got a farm at Deep Creek on the end of the Fleurieu Peninsula. My family's been there for 60 years, which is no time. My family could have been there for 50 generations, but as far as the Earth's concerned, it's no time. So we have a major responsibility to ensure that we don't do harm. Now, as we understand and as we grow and as we develop, our understanding of harm changes, and we have to change with that knowledge. So the philosophy that we work behind to produce what we hope is good food for us, for humans, and that's what we're all about, is we talk in terms of energy. How much energy do we have to draw into the farm for the amount of energy that we send away? Are we bringing diesel in? Are we bringing chemicals in? Are we bringing fertilisers in? And how much do we get back for that? So the only energy that I want to bring into the farm is stuff that comes from the sun and from me and that the earth provides. And so we have a system, and we're getting incredibly close now to have a system that is self-generating. I don't like putting a term on any type of lifestyle or farming type, because it locks you into something. If you say you're an organic farmer, these are the rules you have to live by. If regenerative farming, regenerative agriculture is the big buzzword at the moment, but it can mean a whole lot of different things to a whole lot of people. So I just like this simple analogy of energy. And we've got to separate energy from dollars. We spend our whole life trying to extract money from the next person. And if you think about the stalls we've got here today, it's about providing a livelihood for those families, but really we're just extracting money from somebody else. We're swapping something for money. And our whole economy works on that, so we can't ignore it, but maybe we should be a little bit more respectful of what we're trying to do. Instead of trying to extract the maximum amount of money, perhaps we should be trying to extract the maximum amount of mutual benefit. So on our farm, and I haven't got time to talk in depth about what we do on the farm, but it's pretty simple. We grow grass, we feed it to animals, the animals feed the soil feeds the grass, and then we have a product that we can sell to keep our family going and to invest back into our landscape. I'm very happy to talk details with anybody about what we do. I'm very happy for people to come and visit and see what we do. But I just thought the philosophy of what we do is probably the most important thing for today, especially if I've got an audience that's fairly sympathetic to it.
Thank you, Ben. Wonderful. We'll have time for questions at the end, and there certainly will be a little bit of time before we move out to our finale too, so you can speak to the speakers. Next we have Chris Day, and this is his picture and his sheep.
Some fantastic presentations there. Really honoured to hear both of those. Sheep, yeah, it's an interesting one. So I could tell lots of stories, but I'll keep it short. Studied environmental science and I learnt sheep were bad. And I've thought that for some time. These are our sheep. So I've obviously changed my tune a little bit. Hearing about fire on country and healing country with fire is also amazing. And Ben touched really nicely on the philosophy of us and many, I think, regen ag farmers, whatever box you want to put us in. But yeah, I think that was really nice. The link with, you know, we're here to try and to heal country, to make country better, and we're here to try and help people. For us as food producers, we're here to try and grow the best quality food we can while also improving landscape, and to try and provide the best nutrient-dense food we can. And obviously that also provides us with somewhat of a livelihood. So I guess that's where we come from. And the better our landscape functions, then the better we function. You know, we see landscapes which are degraded, and the people on those landscapes are generally also degraded. We see landscapes that are flourishing, and a lot of the time the people are also flourishing. So I think those two things are quite linked. And so that's, you know, we're always aiming for that. And I guess trying to give everything the best chance they can. So our animals are super friendly. Generally we walk into the paddock and they'll come up. We've got a few hand-raised lambs that you won't see in our freezer. And they'll come up for a scratch. And in general, you know, they're pretty relaxed. They've got a pretty good life while they're here. And we try and offer that, which makes it nicer, I think, for us in terms of the management, and also nicer for the animals. And I think it comes through in the produce as well. And like Ben said, we're trying. We're not quite as far along as Ben, but we're trying to have minimal input into the farm that doesn't come from the sun. So we do bring in hay, but that's about it in terms of stuff for the animals. And then we try and also minimise that by reducing our stocking rates over summer. So when we're heading into less pasture, less grass growth, we don't get close to that speaker. We reduce the amount of animals on country, so to try and reduce the animal impact. When we have more grass and more growth, then we increase our animal numbers. So that's a very quick summary of that. But yep, thank you. You pre-read my cue. So we had an awesome artist make these up for us when we started our CSA. So my lovely wife and daughter are back there somewhere. So what's a CSA, you may ask? So CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. So as the term suggests, it's a direct relationship between the food grower and the food eater. And generally what we work on is building a long-term relationship and connection to customers, and that's the general basis to CSAs. There's heaps of different models and heaps of different things that people do for CSAs. They're quite common as a veggie box or fruit and stuff like that. And then there is elements of for us, we do meat, olive oil and garlic as our main produce. And I guess the benefits are several. So it's trying to put a face to the farmer, I guess, is part of it. And it's also a direct relationship with the customer, which really helps us as well. So we get that feedback straight away. So we're standing there, we're selling our produce, we're handing over goodies, and then we'll get feedback back. And that's really important for us in terms of sometimes it's pretty hard being a food producer. You have to deal with the weather, the throws and cons, the good and the bad. There's not a lot of rest a lot of the time. And sometimes you've got to do things you don't want to do, etc. So that's really humbling for us to be in contact with customers. And I think it's also nice for customers having that connection where you can talk to the person who's growing some of your food and ask some of those questions and have that support. So we really enjoy that. We personally, our CSA is seasonal. That just works with us, and like I was saying before, so we try and harvest our animals sort of over the spring and summer. So that's when we open our CSA, so November through till Feb. And then a lot of people will come back the following season, so it sort of works like that. Some CSAs, like fruit growers, you might pay 3 months in advance and get a veggie box every week. There's heaps of different models, but how we do it is basically we open up orders. Our members or previous members have first dibs, so to speak, and then we open it to the public. Generally, we only harvest what we've sold, which is really good in terms of stress management. In terms of you're not going, oh, are we going to sell this, and being really worried about it. So we try and have it so we only harvest what we've sold, and then if we get orders in after that, then we'll do another round. So we sort of go around like that. 1 minute. Whew. All right. Setting the price is a big one at the moment. Some of you might have heard, some of the farmers are getting pretty rock bottom prices for stock at the moment, talking to Ben as well. So one of the beauties of a CSA is you're setting the price and you try and make that fair. So when prices are crazy high, we're somewhere in the middle. When prices are super low, we're somewhere in the middle. So we aim at that. Next slide, please. This is a simple infographic. So Eastern States is all over CSAs. SA not so much. So we got this done by our graphic artist there, Violin Buyer. So you sign up, you purchase before you get your food, at least 2 weeks before. We use that funds to go into our landscape, fencing, trees, water, etc. So we have that up front. And then you receive your goodies. You get the opportunity to connect with us, and then together we form a relationship. And so like Mel here, she opens up to the public, which is awesome. We're still working towards that, but we will. And I guess moving forward, I've probably got about 5 seconds. I think a lot of it, which I noticed on that board there, is working on more collaborative and cooperative models where us producers and customers and people can work together in order to share that load. And share the story. And so, thanks a lot.
One of my favourite models, community-supported agriculture, and certainly something we need more of here in South Australia. We are lagging behind, and it's certainly the way to go, I feel. Okay, over to Kim. Come on down. Next slide.
Hi, everybody. That was pretty loud. My name's Kim. I'm from Kitchen Farm, Adelaide Hills. I'm technically the nursery and market garden production manager, but they just call me the farm guy. I actually don't even remember my own position. I have to often copy and paste it when I fill in order forms. So I started at Kitchen Farm in February. I previously to that ran Port Adelaide Food Gardening for almost 4 years. And then I went up to do a consult and I just never left. And it's been great. Kitchen Farm, Adelaide Hills. Basically, to put it, it's very overly complicated. But to put it in its simplest thing is within the Newham development in Mount Barker, there's a farm within it. And that's basically it. So it's pretty cool. So a residential development in Mount Barker is called Newham, for those of you who don't know Newham. And when they designed the master plan, they put in land that was allocated for what they coined as a community farm, which is incredibly grey and vague and super fun to figure out what that means. But within it, there's the number has varied a little bit, but I've figured it out, and it's 13 hectares of green space that's given towards the farm and farming projects within it. So it's really exciting. When I first went in for the consult and I met my now boss, I was a little bit surprised because developers don't particularly have a nice name, and there's generally a picture of an evil corporation in suits standing over you. But yeah, when I met my boss, I was shocked at how nice she was, and two, I was surprised that they were even doing this. So yeah, I basically never left, and I started in February. And from there, I basically just started figuring out how we're going to tackle this whole project. So when I first started, the one thing that we did have, and that was already there, was we started a cafe. But I previously, before I got into permaculture and horticulture in the nursery world, I was a chef for many years, so I did my time. And I realised that the cafe wasn't quite up to scratch, so we renovated the whole thing, and it was a kitchen nightmares, Gordon Ramsay-esque type makeover. So we went in, and I dramatically said, "Shut it down! What is this?" And then threw stuff out. And then, so we hired an amazing head chef that I've known for many years. Her name's Mounty, and she's French-Canadian, and she's freaking awesome. She grew up in a farm in Canada, and so she just totally got everything that we wanted to do. So we employed her, and then we also employed the coffee before I started was not good. So we employed a really good barista, and we've got a really good coffee team on board now. So there, the cafe, which is the kitchen farm Pantry, has really taken off. So we're really happy with that. And I took a photo of, it's funny, if she saw this, she would like freak out. But this breakfast here, this is like our farmer's breakfast. So everything is from like a local producer. And so yeah, but yeah, go to the next slide, I reckon. So my main role is working on the nursery, and so we've just gotten the DA approval for the 3-acre nursery and market garden that's attached to it, so we'll be able to grow everything there on top of producing it in this new location, which is really exciting. But since I started in Feb, I converted this pop-up place into a what I call a propagation nursery. So this is my home for most of the time. But yeah, I've been working in the nursery world for a while now, and it's fascinating to me because there's this big, like, organic farming has really, I would say it's started to break into the mainstream. Like, a lot of people are a little bit more conscious about it. I mean, you know, like Woolies and Coles are trying to have their bit, you know, so I feel like that's broken into the mainstream. But when you go to a plant nursery, no one really ever questions how it's grown. It's just this thing of you go into a plant nursery, there's this wall of green, and you're like, oh, amazing, plants. But those plants could come literally thousands and thousands of kilometres away, grown in a heated greenhouse, and then transported on a truck all the way to this other nursery. And nobody asks the question. So my whole thing with being in the nursery world is trying to be as transparent as I possibly could, and actually growing stuff myself and selling that stuff that I've grown, so it's grown in this climate. I wanted to show a little thing that happened over winter. So I'm really big on perennial species, and I had 3 perennial spinaches, and 2 of them got completely annihilated in the beautiful, nice, warm, sunny Mount Barker winter that I have. But my Okinawa spinach was the only one that survived. So for me, like, I'm not going to promote the other 2 species, but I will promote this one. And I will say, look, it survived, and this is how I grew it in this area. But if you are in a little bit more of a frost-prone area, then it might not. But yeah, so that's a big thing for me. And growing stuff locally and doing it with organic inputs, or, you know, not like the best possible, not certified organic, but best input you can is what's really important to me. And then, yeah, we do heaps of other stuff. We've just started doing shiitake mushrooms. And we didn't plan this, but my son Finn came along to the day as well and is here right now. It's very good timing, actually, Finn. So yeah, when we started doing the inoculating for the logs, it's really fascinating. If you've never grown mushrooms and logs before, we realised we could do it all on weed tree species. So we're just lopping limbs off of oaks and elms and stuff that's just popping up on our river, on our creek line. And then we would just doing it all, and then my son Finn helped us for like an hour just putting in plugs. And the guy in the photo, that's Danny from Barossa Gourmet Mushies, who's collabing with us on it. So yeah, it's opened up heaps of opportunity. We've started doing some really cool stuff already. And then we have a partnership with Community Living Australia, which is an organisation that organises programs and assisted living with people with disabilities. And so like 3 times a week, I have people from Community Living Australia coming in, and it's evolved to this really cool sort of therapeutic horticulture program that we've just started developing. And it's amazing what, people get out of just with farming and just going outside and getting their hands dirty. So yeah, I work with a lot of these legends. This is Gary C. He loves being in every single photo that takes place in my work. The people I work with the most, they actually don't like being in photos, but Gary C., if a photo comes out, he's in it within 2 seconds. So that's a really cool part of my job. And yeah, this is some farmers. We always try and support local growers. So if you do grow stuff, we have a restaurant and we can't do everything. So to have a chat, we do need a new egg supplier. And I just wanted to briefly mention for Liz, I wanted to mention this guy, Jackson here. So his story is super interesting. We both used to work together at my old nursery. We had like a bit of a relationship when he was growing stuff for me. And then he's just moved up to Kerry Gully to start his own farm, Terracura Farm. And his story is classic because he's a market gardener that's grown exponentially each year and he's pumping out more food, but he's just getting absolutely slaughtered with infrastructure costs. And we are as well, but I'm in a very fortunate position where I have financial support, and I'm employed to do what I do, but there's like a company and there's a team and there's people and there's councils, relationships that are trying to help this project. But guys like Jackson, they're the ones that struggle the most. So we're trying to collaborate to help support those guys. And so I wanted to give a shout out to Jackson and but thank you. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Drew. Love all these little helpers up here. Wonderful. It's a great story. And just to mention too, Jackson has a CSA as well in the hills, and he has a massive waiting list. So yes, that is a great model. Okay, it's over to Jessie now. The lovely Jessie is going to join us. We'll leave that photo, but she can.
Yes, I didn't bring any slides. I perhaps should have done that. Oops. My name's Jessie. I am from my grandma Ben. I'm actually from Adelaide, so I'm not a Fleurieu local, but my mum does live in Wollonga, so I feel like I'm kind of like a little bit of a ring-in. Unlike all our speakers so far, I guess I'm a little bit of the urban link, I guess, to country. And also, we do a lot of sustainability within my business, which is a cafe and catering business. So obviously, everything we do is focused around enjoyment of food. But I think most importantly, I really like to know where the food comes from, so we can treat it with a lot of respect to make it into something even better to feed all of you lovely people that come visit us. So one thing that really links what we do to the ethos is the name of the business, being my grandma Ben. It actually it is named after my grandma, who was called Ben. People always think that's really weird. So her real name wasn't Ben, it was actually Betty, but my oldest cousin couldn't figure out if people were saying Bet or Gran or whatever, so he called her Ben, and then we all called her Ben. So I wanted to name the business after her because I think it's not really about her, it's more about the type of person and that era of people. So she was really, frugal, mindful of her waste, really celebrated the seasons. They were poor for a long while all the kids were growing up, and then kind of my grandpa became a doctor and worked really hard, and then they were quite well off. But for a long time, they didn't have much money, and that really stuck through to all of the kids, and a lot of my family are farmers, except for my immediate family. So there's always been a real celebration and appreciation around what's in front of us on the table, particularly if it's meat, because we knew it would come from the farm, and so there was a real tie to knowing that that was an animal and it wasn't just bought from the supermarket. So that ethos and celebration of the small things like a beautiful ripe tomato is something that I really try and incorporate into the menu at the cafe particularly, and the catering menu as well. We do like a lot of weddings and corporate events, and sometimes you have to compromise a little bit, unfortunately. But it's really important to me to really reflect that ethos in most of the things that we try and do. And one of those I guess one of the things that we try and really work on is our waste. And every time we're faced with making a new decision, we'll try and make a better one. So, for example, we've just literally tomorrow getting kegged milk installed at the cafe, which is really exciting. Thank you, Fleurieu Milk. So that's something that, we've been waiting for this opportunity to be able to improve that aspect of the business. Obviously, we started off just doing filter coffee, which had a lot less waste. And then, customer demand, people want espresso coffee. So we've done things by really being really picky about our suppliers in that way. So Fleurieu Milk is a great supplier, even better now that they're doing us some kegged milk. And our coffee supplier is a really sustainable coffee roaster as well, the Elementary Coffee in Adelaide. And we try and keep everything hyper-local. So our baker is actually next door to us. We're really privileged to have the Lost Loaf right next door. I know you make beautiful bread. Yeah, sorry. And yeah, we try and keep everything super seasonal. Menu changes all the time. We pickle and ferment everything to try and minimise waste as well. So I think because people know that we love pickling everything, we'll get beautiful, like massive bucket loads of amazing homegrown produce that we trade for finished pickles or coffee or food or whatever we can. So we love working with our community there in Adelaide. And we're very fortunate that the Bowden-Brompton community is very mindful. It's a very green community. There's lots of work they've been trying to do to make it a really walkable part of the city as well, and really minimising cars. It's hard because everyone in Adelaide is really used to driving everywhere, but it's growing, and a lot of our amazing customers are local, so I love that. It's really, really special. Of course, we welcome anyone from anywhere as well. And what else was I going to talk about? That was really everything, yeah. So just mostly focusing about waste, being mindful about consumption. It's such a greenwash out there with the sustainability word chucked out. So I think for us, focusing on two aspects by reducing our food waste, we compost everything that we can. We have the tiniest little waste bin at the end of each week, and we recycle everything we can. So just putting in the effort to make those changes, I think you can really ask that from business. Because it's very easy to do. I think it's just about making the choice to do it sometimes as well. And that's all from me.
Thanks, Jessie. It's so lovely to have our urban cousins here too today and to make that link between the urban and rural, and that's a really important one. Charles Massey has this great quote, which I can't remember exactly, but how important it is to connect our urban cousins with our rural cousins and how we can make that connection and understanding where our food's coming from. Next up is Dave, our baker, who is actually here with this beautiful bread outside to tell us his story.
Hi, my name's Dave. I run a small business called Hey Baker down in Middleton. I guess the overall vibe of our bakery is that we bake out of the back half of our shed. Doing entirely sourdough products with as much of a focus on wholemeal as possible. So that comes down to, I think, our least wholemeal-y product is 92, 93% of the entirety of the grain, and pretty much everything else is 100%. That whole thing started kind of in a bit of a funny way. We moved down to Middleton, myself and my partner Kate, who's over here in the green dress, looking lovely, nearly 3 years ago. And at the time, both of us were working outdoor ed camps, so taking kids out kayaking and rock climbing and bushwalking and whatever else. And at that point, we kind of decided that we wanted to start a family, and it seemed like going away for weeks on end probably didn't fit with that whole vibe. So to try and give ourselves a bit more structure and a little bit more, hopefully, flexibility and time to spend with our family, which is upcoming, we decided to start a business. And that ended up being a bakery because that was one of the things that we could do. Starting at the smallest of scales, it started off almost like one of those scenes in E.T. where I was riding around. At the time, we were called Hey Bagels. I was only cooking bagels inside, and I would ride around with a little basket on the front of my bike after texting 7 customers and delivered to their door, which was great fun, but obviously not super sustainable from a financial point. Shortly after that, Kate got us into one of the markets down there, and that's kind of been the growth from there. Shortly after that, we started building the little bakery out the back and moved into that, which has been awesome. Through that time, we had a bit of a passion for nutrition beforehand, especially from Kate's side of things, and that was the start of the whole meal side of things. And then in the process of learning more and more about baking, we ended up meeting Chris and Em from Small World Bakery and getting to know them and starting to use some of their product. And that was just an absolute light bulb moment for me, who had not really much of an idea of what I was doing. I don't have any baking training. I've got no skills in that regard other than what we've learnt. So being able to go out and talk to them and find out how much of a connection they had to, well, they were milling themselves at that point, how much of a connection they had to the farmers before them, and then even back to the seed development side of things, was just incredible and really good to start to learn the issues that we were facing in sort of the wheat field. I mean, pun intended. It's a tricky thing to grow in an ecologically friendly way. I mean, you are ploughing the field every year. You're going to stick new seed in every year. Hopefully that's changing. There is some really interesting stuff going on with perennial grains at the moment. Still, there's going to be some issues there. Field rotation is really interesting to try and figure out properly, but that was, for us, a real eye-opening moment of trying to figure out what we wanted to be as a business and how we needed to think about what we were doing, the products that we were purchasing to make the products that we were then selling on to people. That also opened up the idea of freshly milled flour, the idea that we can have flour sitting on our shelves for months and months and there be nothing wrong with that. It's kind of weird now that I think about it. That only happens because you separate the germ out, and that's got the fats, some of these really interesting nutrients that are in that part of the grain kernel. That's the bit that goes rancid. So most commercial mills, get rid of that, no use. That means we waste more product in the end, but you also have a longer shelf life. If we can actually, like Small World did, generate smaller and smaller scale circles, I guess, of people purchasing directly from the miller, going out there every week. I'd go out and have a chat to Chris and Em and talk smack while I picked up my flour, and then come back and bake with it within 2 or 3 days of it being milled. That was awesome. And the fact that I was able to get the entirety of the grain milled meant that there was no waste on that end of things. And that works out to be, I think from the farm, if you get rid of the bran and the germ, and you end up just with the starchy bit, the endosperm, you get rid of about 15 to 20% of the entirety of the grain. So if you choose to have a wholemeal loaf, and it does actually have 100% of the grain in there, suddenly that's a very easy decision that you can make to increase the farmer's yield by 20%. So, sweet, that seems like a no-brainer. So that's been a really interesting conversation for us to have with customers as we've moved from bagels to scrolls and then into bread, and hence changed our name into Hey Baker because it didn't really make sense to only be called bagels anymore. But to not produce a white loaf and for people to come past and say, do you have any white fluffy loaves? Like, no, we do pretty well with our wholemeal. It's still like pretty light. You get good stuff, and it's really flavourful and tasty. Some people are still just totally switched off to that idea. But that's okay. We get to have that conversation with people every week. And every now and then people come back and they're like, that was pretty good. Or the people that, when some of our stuff sells out and there's only like a big old dense rye loaf left. And they're like, I'll try it. And they come back and it's like, that was my favourite loaf that I've had in years. And that's awesome. Hopefully we can continue to try and do a bit more of that stuff. And with Small World no longer being a business at this point, that's kind of where we're leaning to and working with Liz now to try and work with some other bakers, some farmers to try and grow specific varieties of grain that work really well in that system. Not all varieties of wheat are really good at being milled wholemeal, so picking the right varieties, trying to do stuff with population wheats, which is an old idea, old in terms of an agricultural sense, but stuff that has diversity in the field and harvested all together and starts to adapt to its area. That's an awesome thing. And then, trying to find a miller to do it all, and then we can start going on a good path again, which will be awesome. So we're trying to do good things with a product that sometimes can be grown really poorly. Anyway, thanks.
I have to share an additional Chris story that Dave was referring to, Chris from Small World. When he did some talks for me, he used to talk about the Mr. Whippy bread, so the soft fluffy bread, and he would say you go down one aisle, pick up your white fluffy bread, and then you'd have to go back down the other to get all the vitamins that have been taken out of it, so pick up all your vitamins. And I think, Dave's referred to his amazing bread, and what a beautiful taste and good nutrition it is too. Okay, we're going to finish now with me. You get to hear from me now. I just want to set the scene for what today is behind. Today is this Hills and Fleurieu Local Food Future Project. It's a mouthful, and this is the amazing group of organisations behind this project. So I won't list them all because you can see them, so you can... And my business is the Food Embassy, and I'm in the lucky position of being the local food activator, the key role within this project. Next slide, thanks, Carly. But before I go any further, I just want to acknowledge this beautiful photo, which I had the good fortune of working with Quahli, and we did a walk on country, on Kaurna country at Aldinga Scrub, and this is a picture of her beautiful artwork in the sand and her kulamon. And this has been a big part of my journey so far, and this role is the deep listening, building authentic trust and relationship, and that was one of the key things for today, is really that valuing of country and deep listening to how we can do this journey together and differently and better. Okay, next slide. So the Food Future Project, as I said, it's a collective. These are three things part of it. We're looking at a food plan, we have a food activator, which is me, a few days a week, and then we're looking at catalytic food projects. And by that I mean, in the next slide, we are looking together at what can happen in this region. Where are the gaps? Where are the needs? And these are just an assortment of some of the things. But today is really to hear from you. So we've got our boards up there. Please, behind Matthew is give and get. He referred to previously. The map is on the other side of him. Who are we missing on the map? And here so far, these are some of the things that we're hearing. Logistics, so that's what that big map here, I think Craig might be still in the room or have to go with his kids. So we're looking at the fact that, this is a big issue for a lot of producers, of course, and how we can be effective and more efficient in that, and the wins for everyone, really, if we consider that. The next picture along is looking at food hubs. How can we consider to aggregate or bring other opportunities for ways people can get their food? So we have amazing farmers markets here. What else could we think about? Could we think about midweek farmers markets? Could we think about food hubs? So there are other ways that we can get our local food more easily. And please, again, feel free to add up any ideas you've got around that. Down the bottom is that beautiful picture of Wattle Seed, First Nations led and First Nations run enterprise. I think Quahli didn't have a chance to mention this, but only 2% in this country are actually owned by First Nations. So it's an absolute food crime, and something that certainly needs to shift. And there's a lot of opportunity and possibility in that space, and that's something we really want to work closely and strongly with to build. And then this other lovely picture down the bottom, I think that's from Village Greens, a urban farm who provided some of the food in the hamper today. How we can support our local farmers. They are doing it tough. We have these beautiful days like today and we're celebrating, but there is also the reality of how hard it is to be farming. I grew up on a farm about 4 hours north of here, in the mid-north, and on a different scale, but it's a hard area, and we really got to celebrate and also advocate and lobby and support farmers to get a decent wage, to be able to pay for that infrastructure that Kim mentioned. Because, if we want to eat local and we want to really support our environment and our local economy, that's where it starts. And in that is land access as well. So people being able to get land access, and that's a critical part for First Nations too, being able to get land access. I will now going to wrap up. So this is who I am. We're from the Food Embassy. We're a social enterprise. It's been an absolute delight to be hosting this today with Mel Hollick at the back, and a huge team, which we'll thank in a minute. But before I wrap up and then we we might have a little bit of time for questions before we go for dessert, just want to refer to the board over here. We've got some local actions. So there are some dots there, and we're going to hand out some dots to people. Really encourage people to vote with where we think we need to go with this project. What do you want to see? This is your region. How do we move to being more vibrant, more thriving and supporting? It's really critical part for climate change, for local economy and for our wellbeing. So we've got food hubs, we've got a Village Greens depot. So just the word on that, Village Greens are an urban farm. They're based at Aldinga. They have an online shop, but they're also thinking about coming out towards Mount Compass. So if you are local and if that's something you're interested in, put a dot there. First Nations enterprises, lobbying local governments to support local farmers, and whatever else you think of. So this is a time we really want to hear your voice. You are really a critical part in this, and that was one of the main key purposes for today and this event. I now think we might have a little bit of time for any questions. I don't know if Quahli's still... Yes, Quahli is there. And then what we're going to do is we are going to move out to grab some beautiful dessert and then move to our closing back under the trees again with Kyla.